Every person who ever achieved something significant failed first. Not once, not twice, repeatedly, publicly, at moments when quitting was the logical choice. The difference between them and everyone else was not talent, not luck, not circumstance. It was one decision made over and over again in the moments when everything said stop. They didn't stop. And that single variable changed everything. We live in a culture that has romanticized the beginning, the launch, the announcement, the first step. The moment someone decides to start, that gets celebrated. What doesn't get talked about is what happens between the start and the result, the middle. The middle is where most people disappear, not because they weren't serious, not because the goal wasn't worth it, not because something catastrophic happened, because the middle is brutal in a specific way that no one prepares you for. In the beginning, everything is new. The motivation is high, the identity shift feels real, progress feels visible. Then the novelty fades, the results slow down, the feedback loop goes quiet, and you're left with nothing but the work, stripped of the excitement that made it feel possible in the first place. This is called the valley of despair in behavioral psychology, the phase between starting and succeeding where the cost is fully visible and the reward is not yet real. Most people hit this valley and interpret it as a signal that it's not working, that they chose wrong, that it's time to reassess, and they stop right before the terrain changes.
Here is the thing about quitting that no one says directly. Quitting doesn't feel like quitting. It feels like clarity. Suddenly, you can see all the reasons this wasn't right for you. The timing was off, the approach was wrong, the goal needs refinement. The mind, desperate to protect you from the discomfort of the valley, generates an extraordinarily convincing case for why stopping is the intelligent choice. It uses your own voice, your own logic, your own values, and it sounds like wisdom. But here is how you know the difference between genuine reassessment and sophisticated self-deception. Genuine reassessment happens from a position of honest evaluation. It asks, is this the right direction? Sophisticated self-deception happens from a position of discomfort. It asks, how do I make this pain stop? Same conclusion, different origin, and the origin determines everything. Because if you stop every time the valley gets deep enough, you will spend your entire life starting things and explaining why you stopped. And the explanations will always make sense. That's the point. That's the trap.
In 1994, psychologist Angela Duckworth began studying what she called grit, the combination of passion and perseverance for long-term goals. Her research spanned decades and thousands of subjects: West Point cadets, national spelling bee competitors, teachers in high-need schools, salespeople, students, athletes. The finding was consistent across every single population. The single greatest predictor of long-term success was not intelligence, not talent, not socioeconomic background, not even work ethic in isolation. It was the willingness to continue past the point where continuation stopped feeling reasonable. Duckworth found that highly talented individuals quit at significantly higher rates than their less talented peers. Not because they were weaker, because their talent made early success easier, which meant the valley hit them harder when progress inevitably slowed. They had never been forced to develop the one skill that matters more than any other: the ability to keep going when keeping going makes no sense. And here is what that skill actually is, because it is not what most people think. It is not willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes. It fails. It is not motivation. Motivation is emotional weather. It changes without warning. The skill is identity. The people who don't quit are not the ones who feel the most motivated. They are the ones for whom quitting is simply not consistent with who they are, not a rule they follow, a fact about themselves.
This is where the psychology gets precise, because identity is not fixed. It is constructed, brick by brick, decision by decision. Every time you follow through when you wanted to stop, you cast a vote for a specific version of yourself, a version that finishes, a version that can be trusted,
a version that the valley cannot break. Every time you stop, you cast the opposite vote, and your brain is keeping count. Not consciously, but the pattern accumulates. After enough votes in one direction, the identity solidifies. You don't decide to quit, quitting decides for you, because that's who you've become. The inverse is equally true. After enough decisions to continue, continuing becomes the default. Not easy, not painless, but automatic. The question is never whether the valley is deep. It will always be deep. The question is who you are becoming with every decision you make inside it.
Think about the thing you stopped, the one that still comes back to you, late at night, in quiet moments, when you see someone else further down the road you left. You told yourself a story about why it made sense to stop, and the story was probably coherent, maybe even true in parts. But beneath the story was a valley, and in that valley was a version of you that chose comfort over continuation. That choice compounded, not just in that specific pursuit, but in the template it created. Every subsequent valley became slightly easier to exit. Every subsequent rationalization became slightly more convincing. Every subsequent version of the story became slightly more elaborate, until stopping became the pattern, dressed up in the language of wisdom and self-awareness and knowing when to pivot. Here is the truth beneath all of that. Pivoting is real. Reassessment is necessary. Quitting the wrong things is intelligent. But most people are not quitting the wrong things. They are quitting the right things at the wrong time, in the deepest part of the valley, one decision away from the terrain changing, and they will never know because they stopped.
You don't lose when things get hard. You don't lose when the results disappear. You don't lose when the motivation evaporates. You don't lose when everyone around you says it's not working. You lose at one specific moment, the moment you decide to stop. That decision, and only that decision, is where defeat actually lives. Everything before it is just difficulty, and difficulty is not the opposite of success. It is the price of it. The valley is not a sign that you chose wrong. It is a test of whether you are the kind of person who deserves what's on the other side. Most people fail that test, not because they couldn't pass it, because they didn't know they were taking it. Now you know. If this is the kind of content that cuts through, subscribe to Mind Siege. Every week, no filler, no inspiration porn, just the mechanics of what separates the people who make it from the people who almost did. See you in the next one.